Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we are in, where are we? Scottsdale, Arizona. Got Cody Nelson here, and I've got Jaryd Bernstein of Vortex Optics. Guys, how you doing?
Awesome, Jay. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Looking forward to chatting with you, Jaryd. I want to start kind of with you.
What? You not knowing where you're at, you got turkey on the brain is what I'm thinking.
Oh, buddy, we're going to stack up some feathers.
You didn't even know you were in my house right then.
We are going to stack up some feathers here in about a week. The games are going to begin, and there's going to be nothing but feathers floating from south of the border up here.
Is Dar going to bring his new dog and train him up right on turkeys?
He might. He just might. Jaryd, how you doing?
Excellent. Excellent.
I want to give you a chance here to let the listeners know a little bit about you. Jaryd Bernstein, been with Vortex since 2015. You're a Marine. Thanks for your service.
Correct. Thank you.
Deployed in 2010, and you're the Territory Account Manager. Let's go a little deeper than that. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got into this Vortex position, a little background on hunting, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me, Jay and Cody. This will be a neat time together. I grew up on the East Coast in South Jersey, the part of New Jersey with cornfields and soybeans, not
nice.
fist pumping and slick back hair, but grew up in a family full of people that didn't hunt. And fastest way out of New Jersey was the Marine Corps. So the day after high school, I signed up for that.
No kidding.
And ended up doing that deployment and ended up having a little injury and got out of the Marine Corps and chased a girl out here to Arizona and ended up working at a firearms retailer, fell in love with the industry. But truth be told, didn't really discover the part of the industry I loved until the Vortex gig came across. And then I was going into all these archery shops and found out that there was a way cooler group of people than the black gun world. And I'll stand on that pedestal and take my lashes. But I fell in love with the people that were archery hunting and bought my first bow. And now I just can't put it down, can't get away from it. So
you're a huge archer?
I wouldn't say huge, but I'm aspiring to be.
Good.
So
good. So do you hunt with firearms as well?
I do. As you know, as tags are available and as we play the patience game, I'll take any rifle tag I can get. But
it's about every 10 years for me.
It's a rarity. It's for sure.
I got a cow tag I can sell you.
Yeah.
I did hear that.
Just meeting you for the first time, and don't take this wrong, but you don't strike me as someone that's from New Jersey.
I try my best to accomplish that.
I don't hear the accent.
Yeah, and I've known you for what? 3 years,
four. If
years?
You're trying to forget the first year, that's okay.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah, I don't think I knew that you were from New Jersey.
No, and when I was in the Marine Corps, I was stationed in South Carolina, and so I did develop a little bit of an accent during that time, and then I have since kind of just leveled out.
There you go.
But I try not to tell too many people about the New Jersey thing.
Being a Marine and spending time in the Marine Corps and serving your country, as far as how have things that you learned in your life doing that to moving forward with Vortex Optics, how has that helped you?
There are aspects of the Marine Corps and the military in general that have helped, with chain of command and just buckling down and maybe taking a project on that you may not be totally excited about, but that's the job and that's what you need to do. So put your head down, accomplish the mission kind of attitude is beneficial. And then there's been obstacles where in the Marine Corps you can kind of say your thing and do your thing and maybe be a little bit violent or assertive, and that's not necessarily appropriate in this world. So it taught me confidence, and it taught me how to buckle down and listen to what needs to be done, but it also taught me how not to act and showed me an example of kind of how not to succeed in this world. So it's
kind of filter on, filter off type of thing.
Absolutely. There has to be a light switch or you're not going to succeed.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll get back to more with you in a second. Cody Nelson, Optics Manager, Glassing Guru, Optics Manager at goHunt.com. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, bud.
Looking forward to having a chat here. I know a lot of the J. Scott Outdoors podcast listeners have a lot of questions about Vortex. I know we have a lot of listeners that use Vortex Optics. We put out there on my Instagram and got a slew of questions in, so we're going to answer a bunch of those in the second part of that. From a perspective of goHunt.com, the optics department, you've had a relationship with Vortex Optics. Talk a little bit about the calls that come in from customers and your relationship with Vortex.
Jay, they've been doing this really well for a long time, and they have a good product. great people, great warranty. And the fact of it is that a lot of my day is spent fielding calls on Vortex product, and I'm just glad to have Jaryd here and be able to have this kind of a discussion and open and talk about all the different products, rifle scopes, binoculars, rangefinders, and I'm just excited about this prospects to come, and we got some new stuff coming on board, and with our footprint with Vortex, so I'm excited about that. And I suppose this should be, I guess we can announce. I mean, it's you're my rep now. So.
Absolutely, yeah, excited about it.
It made sense, and for
I'm
most.
sorry, Jaryd.
We can if we got a pause button on this thing, we'll talk about it honestly.
The funnier part is that I think before I hadn't seen you in a while, and before the show season. We kind of had that blank stare going down the it was sheep show, wasn't it? The airport sheep show. At the airport, and we were like, "Hey, Jaryd, how are you?" And
like, "Oh, you're still alive."
Talking,
you're still alive.
And I didn't realize that he's our mystery ranch.
Okay.
Backpack rep with goHunt, so he works with Brian Campos.
Okay.
A lot. Campos, as Jay knows now.
So I go to sheep show. And I'm sitting there eating breakfast with Cody and Brian. And we have a great breakfast and chatting and this and that and the other. And something comes up and Cody says something about Campos. And I said, I'd like to meet him too. He said, you just ate breakfast with him for an hour. I said, oh, well, you called him Brian and you always call him Campos.
Yeah,
that's a light switch.
Campos,
that's professional.
He is. I'll tell you what, man. He's a wizard at that warehouse.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
He's a good dude. And but yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on board. It makes sense. Kill two birds with one stone, and we've worked together in the past, and so I'm very excited about having you on board with us. It's a good, and Jake. At back at headquarters at Vortex, I know he's looking forward to it too, but I mean he's been super good for us, and again I'm just glad to have you on board.
Well, we'll hit on that. I mean Vortex is full of excellent people. Not to take away from Jake, but we got an awesome crew.
So Jaryd, Vortex Optics, talk to me and the listeners a little bit about Vortex Optics. I'm seeing them everywhere. They're obviously have a good marketing campaign going. They've got a handful of really good guys promoting their products. We have a bunch of the product line sitting here in front of us, and you're going to go through each one of them. But talk about kind of from a 30,000-foot view of Vortex Optics.
Sure. And I think this will come as no surprise. The Hamilton family that started Vortex, they were in the retail business. Specifically, they had a Wild Birds Unlimited store. And so they were selling seed and feeders and then, of course, optics and everything that went along with that. And they saw a gap in not only the quality or the offerings in the optic world, but more importantly, a gap in customer service. And that's not a stab at any one particular brand. It was an overall industry gap that they saw and subsequently thought they could fill. And I think they've proved that they could fill it and that they are currently filling it very well. And so their philosophy was surround themselves with like-minded people. And that's me speaking as someone looking in, not necessarily them telling me to say that, but the team that we have and the people that they've put in positions of authority and positions of influence, like our marketing team or brand ambassadors that we work with, they're the kind of people that, although many of us haven't met, you put us in a room for 30 seconds and all of a sudden everyone's exchanging keys to their houses and everyone's comfortable. And it's just good, solid, hardworking, honest people that care about putting the right product in the right customer's hands. And you'll get it if you call Vortex and you're after that super high-end bino or that extreme performance product, and if it's not something that we can attain at that time or achieve for the customer, you'll get a no-nonsense answer, and they'll just straight tell you this is the product that'll probably work best for what you're talking about. And they'll tell you, we have aspirations to accomplish that in the future, but today we may not be able to, and here you go. So it's just something I've always respected about the company is the people. And I've always said if you can't succeed with that company, you don't have a pulse because it's just a really good team to work with. So
it's kind of an interesting kind of segue to that. A little bit. Before when I was growing up, there really wasn't a lot of places to find expert knowledge. And most of the places that I found it, when I was trying to research, and because I was a gear nut, and it always came from the birding industry. So the fact that they came out of that and segued in, and we could probably go into that a whole lot longer, but that we now have, you kind of have a generation of people now that are grown up, because in that early 90s and that mid 90s when glass really took off, you kind of have we've been doing this now for a little over 20 years, right? So let's just call it 23 or 24 years. You have a whole generation of people that are really way more educated than what it was when we first started hunting and doing our thing. And I just find it fascinating that they came from the bird watching side of things, because that's where I used to spend most of my time on anything I could get about optics and reviews. And you say online, and you couldn't even do that. You literally had to go to those places and talk to them. And the birders they knew glass as good as anybody. Period.
They do. They are very. Yeah.
So I just think that's I guess I didn't understand that that's where they had originally come from, was the optics part of it was from birding. That's awesome.
The large majority of it was. Yep.
Where is Vortex based out of?
Right now, the headquarters is in Barneveld, Wisconsin. Just moved. They built a massive new state-of-the-art facility, bringing some manufacturing there into Wisconsin, and it's working out well. If you ever get a chance or you're in the area, we'd love to take you for a tour. It's a gorgeous facility.
Yeah, it sounds like it. From a grand perspective, would you say Vortex really went after one particular segment of the market, whether it be binos, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, rangefinders? Like, was there one particular thing that they just put their sights on, and that's what they went after, and then they broadened from there?
Sure, I'll give you what I know, and granted, I came on the team in 2015, and so I have a somewhat of a small sliver of the pie to speak off of. But it's always interesting hearing, and it is a family affair. Mom and Dad own it. The 4 boys work for the company, and then there's people that have been there for 10, 12, 15 years too. But to listen to them all talk, and everyone kind of has a unique perspective on how we got there. But it's always interesting to sit in these meetings and see that, 2018 red dots sold as the highest category, or whatever it was. And I'm not committing to that being a hard data point, but that the business continues to evolve. And so to answer the question directly, I would say from my point of view, no. They really just went after that customer service and those little pieces of the market with specific binoculars that they thought could come to the market, and then that binocular took off. And so the evolution has come into what's sitting in front of you now.
Talk a little bit about, you've got your U.S. market guys, and then we have kind of the European market, and then there's the rest of the world. But really, that's kind of the 3 markets, unless I'm wrong.
Generally speaking, in optics, that's yes.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like Vortex really went after the U.S. market first and foremost to try and capture that niche? Because it seemed like, with, say, Swarovski, Leica, and Zeiss, you've got the real high-end optic, but there wasn't much in between.
Correct.
Was the U.S. kind of the target, and is it still the target of Vortex?
I think it's safe to say yes. It's, if you look at the original products that were released, they were released to fill gaps that the family saw in their store, right? And their store was here in the United States. And so they went after those. And then now we do have a massive international following in business, and we have reps and distributors overseas and all that stuff. But the U.S. market is obviously a massive priority in the current, but it was definitely the original goal up front from what I can tell.
Yeah, Vortex, there was a point in time there where, and I don't think this is a knock, I don't think that, there was no middle. You had, stuff that you would buy off, in a blister pack,
right,
and you had stuff that you would buy, like the big 3, and there wasn't a lot of choice in between.
Correct.
And so it makes perfect sense.
And that's where the thriving of the Diamondback and the Viper series have come from, for sure.
Talk a little bit about the Vortex Warranty. I hear quite a bit about it. I get quite a few questions on my Instagram stories when I'm, doing Q&As and such. And Cody, I'd like you to weigh in as well. because you're dealing with customers all the time.
Every day.
But, from Vortex's perspective, talk about warranty.
And again, we're gonna bring this back and forth a couple times where it all relates back to the customer and customer service. The VIP warranty, as we have named it, is just that, and it's an unconditional, no questions asked. We don't care what happened to it as long as it wasn't intentional replacement guarantee. The fires that just happened in California, people lost everything they owned. It's an absolute tragedy. But their scopes that once they were allowed back in their safes and they opened those safes up and there was melted Glocks fused with AR uppers and everything else, they send us back enough pieces that we can identify that product, and we were happy to give them a new one. In fact, they take those, and there's kind of a museum there at headquarters where there's all these stories, whether it be a dog ate it and then passed it and we put it in a bag and kept it, or a house fire, or it fell off a mountain goat hunting, or whatever it was. And so we take a lot of pride in those things. If you ever swing through the SHOT Show booth, we highlight them in the booths, and we have spotting scopes that have been shot. We have a plethora of examples, but it is just a no-nonsense guarantee that if something happens, we have your back.
Yeah, I and Jaryd, there's things that happen, and nothing's ever on purpose. I don't think. If people are doing that, that'll come back to them some other way someday. But the bottom line is that it's, to me, with your guys' warranty, it's not even just the no fault. I mean, you're talking hundreds over the years, but you really just don't hear anything like, oh my God, it took 6 months, and it's just a fairly easy process. It's easy to get it to them. They get it back to you. From a salesman's approach, and I get calls once in a while like, hey, do I have to send these to you and then you don't have to do that. It's just really simple. Like, hey, go on the website, go to, explain to them, you help them out, and they get the address, and out the door it goes.
And we take a ton of pride in that. We take a ton of pride in the turnaround. It is easy, but that's the point.
That's the point. I think sometimes, and you just,
it's not a review process.
It's just you got to connect the dots, and then what if it's 20 years old?
Well, no, and if it's 20 years old, do you have your
receipts from a binocular you bought 20 years? I mean, so you start doing some of that. And the buyer's just like, I just literally, I'll pay for the repair, but I just want to get it repaired. And the bottom line is I'm not naming names and not mentioning, but the point is it doesn't have to be that hard.
No,
I think you
agree.
win people over and over and over again. Not by giving away the farm, but just by taking care of them.
Having their back. It's a very simple concept. And the people that work in our repair department and the consumer sales team that calls you and troubleshoots the product with you on the phone after, let's say, a repairman can't duplicate an issue.
Sure.
They are the most patient people in the company. They're incredible to work with. And they have to be. And to their credit, they have to be. Because when you invest in something, if you invest in a let's say, $1,000 binocular, and it fails you on a hunt that you waited 8 years to draw a tag out here in the West, right? If you're having issues and you run back to camp and you call that consumer sales guy on a Tuesday and you've been hunting 3 days hard, now this binocular is giving you issues. That's a problem. And those guys understand that. And so we've done everything from overnighting things to the local dealer so that hunter can pick it up, to I've personally had consumer sales guys call me and I've taken samples to people out in the middle of Unit 1. And it's just a company that truthfully cares about that end user. Well, and it makes it fun. It really does, taking care of people.
But it makes that buyer. We had a guy not too long ago that, it was when we had the big snowstorms. We had a scope, or a spotting scope that wasn't going to get to, and I'm just talking about goHunt at this point. But the guy says, "Well, man, I really needed that, that spotter." And I said, "Well, why don't you just come to the house and or I'll meet you somewhere. You can take mine."
Mm-hmm. That's the same mentality, Cody. It is. It's
the
just take
look
care
on
of
the. I could tell through the phone. He was like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah. If you need a spotting scope, just tell me where to meet you, and or come to the house. I don't know where you live, but come pick mine up. Take it." And he just, and I don't. again, it doesn't have to be that hard. The guy just needed a spotting scope for the weekend.
It doesn't, but I think it really helps that we're all hunters. Some of us may be younger hunters than others, but we're all involved in it. So, and same concept, our people on our law enforcement side. If an agency has a problem, that officer needs to be back on the street doing his job, and he doesn't need to be worrying about that piece of gear. That's our job to worry about that piece of gear.
Yeah.
So everyone in the company understands that, and they kind of live by that ethos. And again, it just makes it really easy to take care of people because everyone's on the same page. You don't have that one layer of management where you're, oh man, I got to get this through that person. And no, it's always just what do we need to do to take care of the customer? 3-4 scenarios, pick the best one, execute, go. Just there's no nonsense. It's
awesome.
It's honestly my favorite part of the company. So
That's awesome.
Jaryd, before we get into all the different products here that are out on the table and go through each of the lines, you talk about your hunting. Coming from New Jersey, coming out west here, what are some of the things that maybe you learned now that coming out west? I don't know if you even hunted when you were in New Jersey, but what are the differences? What have you noticed, and what do you really enjoy hunting out here?
Sure. So hunting to me in New Jersey I grew up on roughly 400 acres of corn and soy. We didn't own the farm. We lived on the farm, and we subsequently helped work it a little bit to lessen my mom's rent after my dad walked out, but that's for another day. So hunting to me was kill a groundhog, take the dead groundhog, put it on the farmer's doorstep in front of the barn. After school, you get off the bus, you go to the mailbox, and for every groundhog, he gave you $25 cash. I bought my first truck that way. So that was hunting to me.
That's
That's
awesome.
all I knew.
That's incredible.
And then
That's
I went
cool.
in the Marine Corps, and a little bit different type of hunting, and then I came out here. And now, after being introduced to archery, I am absolutely obsessed with archery elk hunting. I've never felt excitement like being 40 yards from a bull that's screaming at you. And I'm to the point now where I don't care if I have a tag. I don't care who it is. I just go, and I just want to be there. If I have to cook, I'll cook. I don't care. I'm absolutely head over heels addicted
There's
to it.
nothing really quite like a bull elk screaming in your
No,
face.
and I've done some
Nothing
exciting
like
things.
it.
I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done one or two things in one or two countries that were pretty darn exciting, and nothing just gets my blood boiling like that.
Have you
So,
had a tag yet for archery?
not an archery bull tag? No.
Really?
No, I've helped on a couple real successful, real fun bull tags, but I haven't let an arrow go on a bull myself. No.
No tags this year?
No tags this year. Kind of on purpose. Got a baby due the end of July.
Good for you.
And so I threw a Hail Mary, a Unit 1 early archery.
Wait a minute. And
Didn't draw it, but
when's the baby due?
last week of July.
Oh, that's a pretty
Smart guy.
smart
Hey.
guy
Yeah.
right there.
So
I don't know if you planned
He
that, but
plans
you
it
did.
around
Yeah,
the
I would-
hunting season.
I may or may not be a Marine that can do math, yes. it's rare, but if you want me to sign those catalogs, I can sign them for you.
Let's dive into the product line.
Love to.
I'll let you kind of take the floor, whether you want to start, wherever you want to start, and let's hear about it.
Sure, and I'll give you a kind of a generic and overhead, and if you, Cody, will just interject where you think it applies,
Absolutely.
I would
be happy
definitely
to.
appreciate it. Within all of our products, and this applies to rifle scopes, binoculars, and spotting scopes, we have different series, and we've given them names to identify the quality, price point, use would be one. And so the way that breaks down is our top of the line would be the Razer series, followed by the Viper series, and then the Diamondback, and then the Crossfire being toward the bottom. Within each product category, binoculars specifically, there are a couple other series that have fallen in, and we'll go over them as we get to binos, series like the Fury and the Kaibab. Things that are very specific use items. So I'll just start with the Diamondback. This is our number one selling series by volume relating to rifle scopes and binoculars. And in there, there's just very useful power ranges and products that just do that, that accomplish that goal of being available and fitting the need of the wide spectrum of the market. So if you look at Diamondback binoculars, for instance, the 10x42 is the number one selling SKU within that line. It's a great base model optic that gets somebody out and gets them excited without completely breaking the bank. It's gonna do what they need to do. It's not a tripod binocular for sitting on top of a hill and looking at antelope 2 miles away. It's a very use specific unit, but at that price point where you can easily find one for right around $229, you're not over the top on the budget side while still getting the same warranty. So
Right.
the insurance policy of no matter what happens to it, we'll replace it, is a big deal. And we see a whole lot of people buy them for their children as the child's getting into hunting. It's a great unit. The parent isn't out that money if child slips on a rock or forgets to tie their shoes or is packing for a hunt. And I don't know how many times we've had Diamondback binoculars get run over by side-by-sides because kids put it down and eat a sandwich, and there it goes. And
Yep.
so really, really good mid to entry level.
I think that's
binocular.
the Diamondback is a great place to talk about. I mean, let's face it, there are new people in the business, new to hunting or new to shooting, and some people are just not going to go spend $500 for a pair of binoculars or what have you. And the fact of it is that, and you can, that binocular right there compared to what I was experiencing when I was younger, I'd take that all day long because, I mean, again, I was trying to figure out how to put a 9x25, pair of lights, loophole binoculars onto a tripod, and they were little tiny compacts. Are you kidding? That would have been. There's so many options on that binocular that I didn't have access to. That I think it's a fantastic way to start off.
No, you're absolutely right. And being that they're threaded, you can put them on an adapter. You can put a child or someone behind a tripod, or just somebody who gets a tag and is going on one hunt and may not know that they're into it, and it's just a get you involved. Just like anything else, pickup trucks or lawnmowers. You get started, then you find out what you might need, and you may have bought the thing that fits your needs the first time, and God bless you.
In traveling, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've had people want them for those. I had just any number of different situations where somebody's literally getting into that price point of binocular that they can really put their eyes behind and actually have a good experience behind them.
Yeah.
Well, let's face it. I mean, the whole key is getting people to look through binoculars and try and find game.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have a binocular that allows them to enter the ball game, so to speak, they're missing out.
Right.
And that's a hunter that maybe wouldn't pick up hunting, where they can buy this pair of binoculars, go out and say, is this for me? And they pull up and they see a buck or they see a bull or see something with this that they're like, this is what they're all talking about. This serves a purpose of getting people in the game.
It does. It does. If it's a massive chunk of the market and what people may or may not need, at least in the immediate. So it does a very good job. One step above that is going to be the Viper HD, which is actually right in front of you there on the right, Jay. Again, the 1042 and then followed by the 1250 are both very good sellers. This is where we see, as education becomes more valuable through places like goHunt and all these other internet places that are now teaching people how to glass, how to actually sit behind a tripod and effectively find game. Things like 1250s have become extremely valid. And so our Viper HD 12x50 is been a great unit from a standpoint of entry-level tripod type binocular. You'll have to forgive me, my 1250 is being used by somebody, so all I have is that 1042 for you to look at today. But we find that a lot of people that are getting into Western hunting, that are now learning that glassing from a tripod is extremely valid, but aren't ready to spend that $1,000, $2,000, $4,000 are getting into a Viper 1250. And truth be told, I've actually done this where I've spray painted a Viper 1250 and spray painted some other competitors. And there's a lot of people that flock to that thing from just an ergonomic standpoint. Love the feel of it. So it's been another great unit for us.
I think the Viper's because I've always used, and I kind of beating a dead horse with this, but I say it because it's true. But in teaching seminars or being at the the sales counter or on the phone, and you tell somebody about buy the best glass you can afford, put it on a tripod, and slow down. I mean, I remember when I got my hands on the first set of Vipers that I'd ever, in truth, I think it was right before there wasn't even an HD model. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, we sold a lot of those binoculars because it was that person that was a Diamondback or below kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And they were really wanting to kind of, step up their game in just increments. And, they buy a set of Vipers, and it was because the Vipers were the first place, where you could step up to a 12 or a 1550 and that gave them a whole new slew of options that were generally speaking not available in a lower price point glass that you couldn't buy a 15 in the lower price points. Well, I think so. It in those first Vipers, you could actually do that, and I think that the Viper took off like wildfire.
It did, and take a step back. I mean, and you said it, and I know you didn't mean anything negative by it. When we say Diamondback Crossfire guy and then Viper Razer guy, I'm a huge proponent of purchasing product that applies to your needs. And it's always funny because I get on these sales calls and I interface with all of the Vortex reps, right? And I sell a ton of Razer and Viper and Kaibab binoculars because this is Arizona, New Mexico, and we sit on top of a knob and we spend 6-8 hours behind our glass and we're looking extremely far distances. Whereas my counterpart in Pennsylvania is like, how do you put up these Razer numbers? And he's never sat on top of a dirt hill and looked for a coos deer in the middle of the desert. It doesn't compute. So to say, Diamondback is a certain class of, it's not a class of person, it's a use. It's what are you doing with it?
Sure.
I have a set of Diamondback 1042s on the dash of my truck every day.
Right.
And I've used them for everything from looking at people that I thought were stealing cars to, reading street signs real far away when I'm lost. I mean, what am I using it for? What does it do?
Right.
Now, when you get behind a binocular and we start talking about fatigue and all those things, then yes, an HD glass is going to make its weight in gold because you can spend more time and therefore be more effective and all that. But the Viper being our first intro to the HD series within the line is just it's been an absolute home run.
And what's the rough price point for those?
The Viper HDs and a 1042, for instance, you'll find them on the shelf at $499.
Yeah.
And that 1250, just for a reference point, would be right around $560.
Okay.
So not a huge price jump if you're looking to get into something that would be maybe a little bit more effective on a tripod in that 12 power from a 10. So.
Okay, so we've got the Diamondback, we've got the Viper. What's next?
So in between, this is one of those kind of area-specific products that we developed. We have our Kaibab HD series, which is an 18x56, and us Arizona residents can take a bunch of pride in that name. But
and for those that don't know, because they say it all the time, it is Kaibab.
Correct.
I get kebab. Literally, I get all kinds of different. It is the Kaibab Plateau. And so
Kaibab National Forest.
Kaibab National Forest.
And it is
so
the
Kaibab
Kaibab
Plateau. It is
Plateau.
the Kaibab Plateau.
It is. I actually was fortunate enough to have a 12B West tag, which is not on the plateau necessarily, but in 2018, so that was cool.
This is probably a good place to say this too, and I want to make sure that when you mentioned the Diamondback guy or whatever. It's funny because when you're in sales, you have people that come in that know nothing, and they say, I just want a pair of binoculars. You have people that come in and buy something only because their friend made them go buy that pair of binoculars. And you have all these different kinds, and as a salesperson, you have to recognize where this guy's wanting to go.
Absolutely. You have to qualify the customer.
And you have to qualify the customer.
Absolutely.
So, there was definitely no disrespect or
no, I knew where you were going.
Meant by that, because you're always, some guys come in and they're like, hey, this is what I am and this is what I'm about, but I really want to go here. And you're like, okay, well, let me show you what's in between here.
Help you, absolutely.
And we're going to make those decisions, and that's why it all comes back to, Jay asks me this all the time. That's why when when people are asking, if someone says, Cody, I want to know exactly what's in your pack or what your opinion is, that is different from me educating somebody and basically walking them through the process of understanding what binocular best fits their need.
Oh, you could be, you could have a Coos deer focused year and not an elk focused year, and your pack's going to change.
Because a lot of people ask me why I carry an 8-power binocular on my chest. Well, because one of my favorite things to do, like you, I want to be as wide a field of view as possible, and I want the easy handheld when I'm chasing elk with a bow.
Absolutely.
It's just that simple.
Absolutely.
So that pair of binoculars for me works best for that. And I Jay gets it. I know you get it, but we get people to argue with us like, oh, you should have 10. Hey, it's not like magic, or it's not like, you got to buy what's best and right for what you're doing.
I love the you should have guy, because I always go back to with that. And
Use specific.
We'll do it real quick, but those guys are always saying, do you use these for work or use them for fun? I'll use them for fun. Okay. Well, for me to have fun, this is what I use. So to tell me I'm wrong,
I love that.
It's kind of silly. And if you're trying to help me grow or learn, that's great. I appreciate it. But to just come out with, well, you should this, and take a hard line. Okay, you're probably not a guy that I want in my camp with me. I just don't.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I love the education part of it.
Absolutely.
And again, it goes back to I coined this many years ago, and whether it's famous or not, I don't care. But I said this, back in my Don Sport Shop days and my Bass Pro days, and literally, you buy the best glass you can afford, or what works for you. Put it on a tripod and slow down. Mm-hmm. If you'll do those 3 things, I'll guarantee that you find more game. It's that simple.
Well, you're 100% right. As much as I don't like to tell you that very often, you're 100% right.
Yeah. God.
One thing I noticed,
Cody on
the
a hot
focus
seat
wheel.
today.
I didn't want Jay to have all the fun. I mean,
the focus wheel on this is really smooth.
It is. And for what that binocular was designed for, and this is the Kaibab 1856 we're talking about, for that long sit with micro adjust when you're trying to pick apart an ear flicker or a differentiating shade of brown or gray, you have to have that. You really do, and you don't need to be chunking through the.
Well, I think
the focus.
And when they first came out with the 20s, and in having the discussions with Paul Neese and guys like that, I think one of the initial complaints of the first round of 20s was the focus wheel was hard.
It was.
Mm-hmm. And so the focus wheel that you see on that now has literally been refined to the point where when you're trying to steady something and you're looking at a mile, it's way different than it used to be, and that should be a testament to Vortex listening to their customers and their people.
As far as what you would say is like Coos deer glassing, long range glassing, would these Kaibab HD 18x56, is this what you would point someone towards?
I certainly would, and I talked to the hunter a little bit. There'd be 2 that I would really have in mind. There would be that 1856, and there would be our Razer 12x50. It would just depend on where they tell me they're going. The 18x56 inherently is a little bit larger and a little bit heavier product, and so if the guy tells me that he's a ultralight backcountry 40 miles in type of guy, I may encourage him to go for a Razer 12. That package is just more compact. If it's a guy that is okay with a little bit heavier unit or wants to sit in one spot for 6 or 7 hours, yes, the 18x56 is an excellent option. And especially at that price point, to be into an 18x56 HD optic on the shelf at $999 there's nothing else compared to that.
And I think the other thing is that the other person that I think needs to be talked about, and we've been hitting this kind of lately, flat out bottom line, there are a number of people that cannot, will not, and will never enjoy looking through a spotting scope. The 18 is absolutely it has to be an option for you.
Yep.
What's the field of view on the 18?
Let me get it for you, Jay.
What is it? 180? No, it's less than 186.
It is 194 at 1,000 yards.
Okay. So when you really think about it, most of the other big 15s are 231 to 236. So that's actually didn't fall off the slope as much as I would have thought it would.
It's certainly pretty close. And when you start weighing again the customer's needs, the budget that's available, the warranty that comes with it, where they're going, what they're hunting, it's not. You'll never hear me say, and I don't sell used cars, it's not the right binocular for everybody. It is the right binocular for a whole lot of people, but it's not the right binocular for everybody.
What kind of price point are we talking on these?
Those Kaibabs will be on the shelf at $9.99.
And that's hard. It's almost unheard of.
It's hard to not consider.
I don't even.
Yeah, for sure.
The truth.
Great value.
There used to be some old manufacturers making some stuff that were probably fell on that line, but they don't anymore. And I can't even think of one off the top of my head right now that's either that power or higher in that kind of a package, size wise.
Well, there's not, and that was a big consideration when previously, and that binocular is only 2 years old. Previously, the Kaibab series had a 15-56 and a 20. And when we redid that series, and I wasn't part of the product development team, I know my swim lane and I stay in it, but it was a consideration to kind of make that series stand out on its own, to hit a very specific price point, and then obviously to have a specific set of features with still maintaining HD glass, but not getting so insane that we were up into a price point that took a lot of people out of the running. So
yeah.
It's been one's been doing good.
That body, I'll say, whether it was 15, 20, or 18s, has sold really, really well, and done really, really well.
So the next is the Razer.
It is, and from a Western hunting standpoint, this is my favorite series to talk about. It's our highest performing series for the people that I talk to on a daily basis. In that series, we do an 8x42, a 10x42, a 10x50, and a 12x50. And the 12x50 out west certainly outsells the others. It is that optic for us and for our customer that puts them kind of on the pinnacle of our line, lets them get behind a tripod and really start picking apart some country. It just does an excellent job. And you'll have to forgive me, Jay. Those are my everyday use, so I did dust them off for you and try to clean them up.
We've been selling a lot of 1050s too.
Have you? Beautiful.
I'm finding that, whether it's me or we're just kind of figuring this out, or as you start selling to more and more people and more and more people across a broader spectrum, there's a number of people that are coming to us with the idea that, hey, look, and people almost, and not to be boastful or, because I think we've all done it sitting here in this room, but you talk about glassing coos deer, and you actually have people calling now like, hey, I'm not glassing coos deer every day like you guys do. You guys glass a whole different way than other people do, and I'm looking for this. And the 1050, because they're wanting that a 10 power, but they're wanting it to be as bright as possible. So I've been helping guys, and I think it's an incredible cross between 1050 or power and exit pupil, because you got a 5mm exit pupil versus a 4.2, or
which is about max.
Is about max. Mm-hmm. So they're incredibly bright, and you put those on a tripod, easily can make the long range glass more clear and help you out at a longer distance. But yet the 1050s, Jay, are no bigger than that. And you put those on your chest, I know those are been on your chest.
Oh, absolutely.
So a 1050 or a 1250 on your chest like that absolutely has a place.
Well, we're talking about a 1250 that's right at 28 ounces. And so in that platform and the size of it is and how small it is, in that weight, that is easily a chest binocular.
I guess I'm getting to the point is that you couple that with a spotting scope. And you've just now created like a really versatile package.
You'd have a hard time wanting.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And back in the day, when people used to only use 15s and the only thing was talked about like down at Jensen's, and that was what they did. They if you couldn't buy the 1560 Zeiss that were $1,500 back in the 80s, then they would hand you the next best thing in the day. and this is true, the next best thing was a pair of 10 by 50 Bushnell Customs. And I had a pair of those. And that's when you finally figured out, like, whoa. Like, I mean,
Huge
man,
difference.
this is so much better than those. And Mom, God rest your soul, but my mom got me a pair of binoculars one time, and it was like a 10 by 50 out of Eddie Bauer. You know, and I'm sure that they cost a little bit and whatever, but you looked at those older 10 to 50 Customs and then compared them to kind of that Poro Prism style, man. It was like somebody opened up a whole new world to me. So, anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't mean at all to take away from the 10s. Just the 12s out west, you know, they own it. They own it for us as far as a number standpoint. And it's funny because I run into guys all the time out in the field that have them.
Yeah,
and I love it. I carry extra hats in my pack, and I give them a hat, and we talk, and they love them.
It's
really neat.
Say the person by name, but Jay knows him too, and one of the most successful coos deer hunters I know used to carry a set of 10 by 50s and a spotting scope. And I'll guarantee that he's got a ton of stuff on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, but again, and then some of that is what you're using it for, and some of it's how you use it, right? That guy obviously figured something out that works for him. More power to you. You know,
and half of this battle is what's comfortable and what works for your eye.
Absolutely.
So what I may like, or Cody may like, or Jaryd may like, until you look through them, until you use them, until you figure out what you do like, you won't get confidence in that piece of glass.
Anatomy is a huge part of the equation. Anatomy is a huge, huge part. Yep. Absolutely.
So what are we talking about price point for these, 842, 1042, 1050 in that range? What's the range?
Right in or around 1,000.
Okay.
So the 1250s will be on the shelf at 1,100. Everything else is gradually below that. Okay. So in that 900 to $1,000 range for the entire Razer series.
Okay.
And that's all stepped up by a couple things, Jay. It's stepped up by glass quality. There's different levels of HD glass, and then we get into different types of coatings. Eye cup construction. Sometimes we have plastic. Sometimes you have metal. Yeah. Sometimes you have different types of machining processes. So it's all relative to the price point of where those things fall.
In everything that we do in optics, I think that's one of the hardest things to explain to a buyer. Is that they'll say, well, what's the difference between this glass and that glass? And, it's hard to explain to somebody, well, the coatings may be different on the outside than, the prisms may be, the focus wheel length. I mean, there could be, 10 different little intangible things that makes the difference between, this piece of glass and that Razer that Jay's got in his hand there. And it's very difficult to because they can't see it.
They can't see it. I always try to make it relative. I told you about the vehicle I bought shooting groundhogs with my Lever 3030, right? You lay under that truck and you can see a difference between the Super Duty that I am now parked out front of your house, right? It's just it's different. It's beefier. It's different. It's relatively priced because of the feature set.
Right.
So
let's dive into spotting scopes.
We do spotters. So spotters are in the same realm where we have Razer being the top, Viper being the middle, and then Diamondback being our entry level or our intro to spotter scopes. What we see out west is mainly Razer and Viper sales. HD glass is obviously pretty important from a fatigue standpoint and from a identification standpoint. I always like to do, when I'm doing demos, I always like to put a red paper plate and an orange paper plate at 500 or 600 yards. And even, through any of our spotting scopes or any really of our competitors, you look through them and you can tell that both those plates are in the reddish family, the rusty family, right? And when you get into an HD piece of glass, you can say the red plate is on the right. So if we're looking for different shades of brown or gray or whatever it is, HD becomes important. And so with the distances we're looking out here, we see Razers and Vipers sell extremely well. Within the Razer line, we have a 27 to 60 by 85, and there's an angled and a straight model. And with that 85, to touch on it quickly, a new product for 19, we released a ranging reticle eyepiece in MOA and in mil radian. So depending on what graduation you're accustomed to, you can purchase either one. That fits our 85 millimeter Razer, and will give you a ranging reticle so that you can call shots. You can use it to size game. You can use it for a plethora of things.
In anybody that has shot, long distance and had a spotter with them that was on top behind them and looking at the same target, you got the same point of impact figured out. And that anybody who has used an MOA reticle in a spotting scope to help his partner call a shot, the secondary follow-up shot, the ability to make corrections and have a hit. I don't have a statistic for it, but I will tell you that it's incredible the amount of accuracy.
It has to be north of 90% is fair.
It's crazy.
Yes.
I was able to visit the FTW ranch. I was incredibly impressed with the ability to do those kind of things and be taught that way. And boy, did that it opened my eyes, but there were some other people that just didn't understand.
There's just so many cool things you can do.
And I'm talking 1,300-yard shots. Guy hits 408 to the left, and when you have the ability to say that's 408, not oh, you're a foot to the right. Well,
one target width left.
What is that?
Yep. Yeah, no, it makes a world difference, and for this conversation, it makes an ethical difference.
Absolutely.
If you have somebody make a clear miss, and I can take a reticle and hold it on the miss, and where we need to go, and make a measurement, and especially like I do volunteer work with children's organizations, and we take kids out hunting, and let's face it, kids don't shoot very well, and we try to spend some time with them, but every now and then they get excited and they blow a shot far left or whatever it is. And when we can make adjustments and ethically engage a target, it's just huge. So I'm a huge fan of that product. I was excited about it. It took some years to get it right. With the adjustable eye relief and just the way the unit works, it is a complete remove and replace eyepiece that you can do on the fly. And so you see I carry it in a little bag. You pull the 85 millimeter spotter out, take the other eyepiece out. It's one little half turn of a collar. Pop it out, pop that one in, turn the collar, and now you have a fixed 22 power ranging reticle that gives you all those references.
And explain to those out there that are listening, if they don't really understand the ranging reticle, what you mean.
Yep. So the piece we're talking about, the unit we're talking about, is an eyepiece, and what it does is it clicks into your spotting scope and internally has a reticle built in. So now you have a reticle in your spotting scope that correlates to the measurements that are on your scope. So if Cody takes a shot and he misses, like you said, 4 MOA to the left, when I'm looking through the spotting scope with the reticle on the same target that Cody's shooting, I will see a splash. I'll see the miss and the dirt puff, and I can take that dirt puff and measure how far from the vitals or from the middle of the piece of steel or from the pumpkin or whatever we're shooting at, and I can tell him, you either need to dial or hold for wind is typically what we miss for. And so here's your windage call. And if he were to shoot high or low, we can use it the same way. It has horizontal and vertical markings to allow us to measure and accurately re-engage.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact stat, but Jaryd, I think you're right. They did some stuff with, I don't know if it was the SEALs or whoever it was, but the follow-up shots with being able to call, MOAs or whatever they were using. It was really, really high. It went the first round they made him do it without, and then the second round they made him do it with, and it was like a difference of 50 to 90. It was crazy.
It's massive. I mean, if you think about it, when you're looking through a spotting scope, now if we're talking about, if I'm in a foreign country and I can measure a stop sign and I have a relative number to go off of to judge, that's one thing. But when we're talking about a deer, if I'm looking at a deer at 900 yards. You might be able to tell the age class of the deer and the relative body size, but now you're banking on getting the genetics right and everything else. You don't know how big that target truly is. So to say, hold 24 inches, what is 24 inches?
Well, that's the thing is that people, I think that's the funniest thing to sit with people that are new glassers. It's funny in the sense when you're trying to describe somebody where the deer is. Mm-hmm. And I say funny because, man, that conversation can go on for hours.
Absolutely.
But the more serious conversation is when game is involved and you're shooting, it becomes very serious. And when someone says, hey, he's, like you said, he's 18 inches. Well, I don't know what's 18 inches at 700. I mean, you better know, and you better figure it out.
And here's another way you can be used is in these areas. And I haven't had the pleasure of sheep hunting yet, but when we're talking about sheep that have to measure a certain curl or whatever it is, you can use that reticle to accurately say that if you know the distance with a laser rangefinder and you plug that into the equation, you can physically say, I know that Yeti cup is 8 inches out there at 800 yards. I can give you that by having a reticle in my spotter.
Interesting.
So now this brings us to kind of a whole nother segment of optics, and that's focal plane. This ranging eyepiece is a fixed 22 power. So by definition, it's going to work the same as a second focal plane scope, which means that at a specific power, the subtensions within the reticle, the lines, for lack of a better term, are equal to a certain distance. And in the owner's manual of that product, it'll say the distance between, let's just say, the center point in line 1 is 2 MOA. With this at fixed 22 power, that 2 MOA is consistent. Now, when we get into first focal plane rifle scopes, that's where, by having the reticle change size throughout the entire power band, if you will, of magnification, those lines adjust and therefore become relative. And so those lines are equal to what we tell you they're equal to at all magnifications. So by definition, this is technically a second focal plane product. But because it's a fixed 22 power, you can't change it, so you can't mess it up. So it's kind of a beautiful thing. I'm not sure if a first focal plane eyepiece would be relative or whatever, but it's one of those things where it was meant to be a very accurate tool, and so taking some of that possible user error out was pretty important.
Nice.
What eyepiece do we have on here?
That's just the standard. That's just the regular one that comes with it. It's 27 to 60.
27 to 60.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that's obviously variable, and then you can replace that with this piece we've been talking about.
And the price point roughly on this scope?
You'll be in or around 1,600.
Okay.
And that's for the angled and the straight on the 27 to 60 by 85. In that series, we also make a 22 to 48 by 65, and the price on that product goes down to around $1,200. I do have one here, Jay.
What'd you say? 22
to 48. And we do that in a straight and an angled as well in the Razer HD series.
Would you say you sell more angled or more straight, Cody? In this Vortex?
Surprisingly, we've been selling a lot of angleds lately.
What would you say, Jaryd?
I'd say angled. If I had to take a wild guess without running a report on my computer, I'd probably say 60-40.
Yeah.
And again, not good or bad either way. Totally up to what you're doing with it. If you're the guy that's like, I'm going to hike to the top of everything, and you're constantly looking down, straight can be great.
Right.
It all depends what you're doing with it. I find angled to be nicer on the range for me.
Right.
If I'm standing, I love straight. It all depends. I'm fortunate enough to roll around with a pile of this stuff. So.
And we've always talked about this, and I just think that when you're glassing with your binoculars, and most of the time, let's just call it 85% of the time, and you're switching from binoculars to spotting scope, I would rather have a straight, because I'm making one change
in that position
and going straight back on. You should basically wind up in the.
That's it.
And I say that because I've had the pleasure of being in Jay's elk camps, deer camps, and everything else. And when I come back to camp, and Jay says, "Hey, did you see that?"
Getting yelled at.
Like, "Hey, how big was it?" And there's been moments when I've heard me or somebody else, "Well, I couldn't really." Well, what do you mean you couldn't really? And so for me, when I'm helping somebody, whether it's somebody that's paying Jay or whether I'm helping a good friend and we've got this tag, and you see some giant deer, and somebody's asking you how big it was or how many points or whatever's important to them,
mm-hmm.
Target acquisitions to me become the most important thing possible. And I've always kind of leaned towards that straight eyepiece only for that and that only.
Sure.
somebody called me out on it. So, I took a hunting partner of mine's, 20 to 60 by 80, and I kind of forced myself to use it for a year. Just to angled, just to shut people up and say, I've done it.
There, I did it.
And here's the thing. Did I find that in certain cases it was more comfortable? Sure I did. Did I find that in some cases I preferred it in those situations? Sure I did. Mm-hmm. But again, it all comes back to
your type of glassing, your
it's what's
concept,
important
absolutely.
to you and your use specific, thing. And the fact of it is, you got to do what's important to you and what best suits you.
And I've had the question, well, is straight more clear because it's more linear and there's no, they assume that there's some massive amount of
Sure.
technology going on inside, and it's not. You figure out what's comfortable for you and run with it.
Of all the days, hours, time, sitting and being with new people, experienced people, really, expert people, I don't care what their level is. I will flat out tell you, I've spent more wasted time with an angle telling somebody where an animal is, and they're not being able to find it, than I have with a straight. Plain and simple.
It's funny, we've started mounting red dots on housings above angled spotters for the law enforcement community to get on target quicker.
Sure.
And that's not a negative toward law enforcement. It's just the angled spotter was available to them. And to make the angled spotter work, we found that put red dot on target, then put spotter on spotting scope. And all of a sudden it's like,
but that in a sense, I mean, and quite frankly, when you're talking about law enforcement or military, no offense, but I think that's probably a little bit more important. And I bet you target acquisition really becomes important.
It is, yeah. When things start shooting back, it's kind of important to know where they're at. Yeah.
Let's jump into rifle scopes.
No, that'd be great. So, and again, in rifle scopes, we have a very similar layout. We have the Razer series, followed by the Viper series, followed by the Diamondback, and then the Crossfire. And in the Razer series, one of the most applicable scopes that's going to be kind of on the range of what we're talking about, Western hunting, backcountry, lightweight hunting, is going to be our Razer Hd Amg 6 to 20 4x50. This was our first 100% American-made scope, but it was kind of designed for that lightweight hunter as these carbon fiber guns get developed in these long-range deer rigs and all those sorts of products. We needed a solution that was lighter than our Razer HD Gen 2. And our Gen 2 is an awesome scope. It's got some features that the hunters don't necessarily care about. And it's got some weight that really took it out of that backpack hunter, ultralight hunter realm. Although those guys, if they hike 10, 12 miles in and they have to make a 600-yard shot across the canyon, they do need a very high-quality piece of glass. So that's what we developed that scope for. Forgive me, there's a law enforcement department here locally that's shooting that scope as we speak, so I had a little short notice and I didn't bring it with me, but it's an excellent scope. It's a 30-millimeter tube. It does have a windage type reticle with the field filled in below to allow for holdovers and wind. And let me just get you a weight real quick here, Jay. It's right at 28 ounces, 28.8 to be specific. So it's not necessarily an ultralight scope, but to get HD quality glass with the reticle selection that it has, it still does come with an illuminated option. It does have a zero stop, a hard zero stop. I referenced that 12B West hunt earlier. My first shot in 12B West was a complete and utter miss. Bouncing around in the truck, my turret had moved, and I just got excited, and it was the right deer, and I took a shot and totally blew it over his back because I had let my scope slip. So those zero stops are important to be able to reach up and grab and crank right back down to where you know you're at and start from where you want to start. So that scope has a ton of features that apply to big game hunting and lightweight hunting and all that. So that's a neat scope. It's followed by our Razer HD Gen 2, which I did bring with me. This is our 4.5 to 27 by 56. You'll feel the weight I referenced, but with that weight comes a lot of key features. It comes with a ton of durability. It does have a locking turret, so if you pull up on that there, then you'll be able to spin. That turret is a work of art in and of itself. The way that the zero stop function works, it also has a revolution indicator. So as you go all the way around, there's actually a piece that protrudes out the side to let you know that you're a full revolution in, so you don't get lost in that turret. They are illuminated. And then this year we put out back up. The reticle is illuminated, not the turret. Just I don't want to get roasted. But this year we did incorporate Horus reticles into that scope series.
Oh, okay.
So a couple new reticles this year, including 2 Horus reticles and then our own take, the EBR 7. So that scope series does.
And
very,
honestly
very well.
speaking, you know, and I've never had the fortune of having it on one of my guns, but the reports that come back from the field, and it literally is one of the most. It's one of the toughest scopes that's in existence. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't shoot him and kill him with it, you can take it off and beat somebody with it. I mean, it literally is. It's designed that way for a purpose. It's designed to take abuse and still, you know, have repeatability to it.
They are very stout. That is for sure. So there's a 4.5 to 27 in that series, and there's also a 3 to 18, and then a 1 to 6. All first focal plane options in the big boys, and then the 1 to 6 is a second focal plane to keep that reticle visible. But
what are you seeing right now in terms of MOA or MILRADs? What? Give me is it a 60-40? What are you seeing right now?
It's so close. There's that false assumption that if you're in the military, you should shoot mil. I always combat that with, do you have a tape measure that's in 1/4 inch or in mils? And then most people do obla inches a little bit easier. But it all depends on the type of shooting that you're doing. Mil radian has a very, very applicable feature set depending on what you're doing. And if you're engaging targets out to extreme distances and you need to make quick adjustments, mil is the graduation for you.
And I think that mil rads, right?
Mil radian.
Mil radian. Yep. Very simply put, it's easier to do the math. And I've only listened to both sides of the argument. Mm-hmm. I don't have a rifle setup right now that shoots 1400, 1500, 1600. You know what? I'm not that guy. I've shot those distances, and they've always been in MOAs. So, but that's just what you get trained in, or
it all depends on the training. You hit the nail on the head. If you're brought up on mils, you'll do great. You'll do fine. If you're brought up on MOA, you'll do fine. I find it easier to instruct someone who's never shot on MOA.
Okay.
That could be my teaching style. That could be my approach to it, right? It's not one, again, like when we're talking about binoculars, one is not better. No, head over heels better than the other.
It's just, they're both incredibly accurate. Mm-hmm. It's just the way that they laid the math out. I was like, oh, well, I mean, some of that math makes more sense, but again, it comes back to what you're trained on, and
it does.
Yeah, so I just was curious about what you see being sold mostly right now. And
truth be told, I'd say it's probably MOA, but it's not by a massive margin.
Yeah, we get asked more about MOA than we do anything already.
It might be 60-40 without running a report. It might be 55-45. It's certainly not 80-20. So. Another scope I'm going to touch on, Jay, is our Razer Lightweight Hunter. This is a 3 to 15 by 42, and this is our ultralight hunting scope. It's a 1-inch tube. It does have capped turrets, so if you're carrying in a sling of some sort or in a pack that has a sleeve to where the rifle is inserted in that sleeve, you don't have to worry about your turret changing as you rip that thing out and begin to take a shot. But what really sets this scope apart is it comes in at 16.5 ounces with HD glass. I was fortunate enough to take a bull with this scope at 784 yards in New Mexico.
Nice.
And with a 1-inch tube scope, where everyone assumes that that's a 300-yard scope, that's 100% not true. Now, I had all the time in the world, and I was able to lay down dial, and then I did have to use some of the holdover within the reticle. But there was plenty built in, and that shot was perfectly safe, and down the bull went. So that's a really neat scope. And if you have that guy that is cutting the handle off his toothbrush and hiking in and not drinking water because he doesn't want to hike with the weight, that's the scope for that customer for sure. And right at that $1,000, sub $1,000 price point. So that's been very, very well received, and I wouldn't be surprised if Vortex kind of continues that line out as that culture of person develops. So that's been a good one. Next is our Viper PST. PST standing for Precision Shooting and Tactical. This does a plethora of things. We find hunters love this. We find law enforcement loves this. We find target shooters love them. It's a very wide range. The range of availability in this product line is huge. So there's everything from a 5 to 25 down to a 1 to 6. And within the 5 to 25 and 3 to 15, there's first focal plane and second focal plane options. And all of those scopes are going to be on the shelf at $9.99 or below. So you're getting into a scope that has an integrated zero stop, not a shim system, but a true hard metal on metal zero stop that's settable. You have first or second focal plane like I hit on. You have multiple different reticles. So you have options where if you want to be able to hold over and use those fields that are filled in with wind values, that's great. If you want to dial, you can reach up and dial. So it's been a really good series that's applied to a wide branch of customers. So
Yeah,
that's a neat one, and that's this 3 to 15 here, Jay. If you wanted to, I saw you peeking at it earlier, but we do have a 2 to 10 in that series, and it doesn't necessarily hit home runs, but what we find is shooters, guys that are really into stuff like 18-inch AR-15s and 5.56, right, or some of the guys getting out of the military really love that 2 to 10. So that's just another one to hit on in that series. It's been a cool scope. A lot of people graduate to the 3 to 15 for a couple more dollars, but the 2 to 10 is significantly more compact with a smaller diameter objective, and it's a neat scope to shoot depending on the rifle. Again, just totally about what the end user's doing.
So with this series, then you've got the Diamondback and the Crossfire, and within rifle scopes, as a company, are you guys seeing, and Cody, I'm curious your input on that as well, are you seeing guys putting Diamondback and Crossfire, a ton on their rifles?
We do sell, by numbers, just by pure numbers, the Diamondback and Crossfire does apply to a larger market.
Because of price point.
Because of price point and because of feature set. Diamondbacks and Crossfires, most of which are not necessarily illuminated reticles, or not first focal plane options. First focal plane typically adds 10 to 15% in the cost. And so if we're trying to hit a certain budget, those scopes usually apply. Right. If we're trying to hit a generic use, like I have my grandfather gave me his 30-06 and I want to be able to shoot paper plates at 100 yards, perfect. Yeah. We can accomplish that in those two series and not break the bank for a guy that shoots once or twice a year. I'll be honest. I hunted Africa with a Diamondback 3.5 to 10, and nothing I shot at walked away. So they're certainly effective, including a kudu at 484. So it's not like they're not capable. Typically, the guys that are shooting at those things just have a different set of parameters that they want to hit, and so we find that they're into the Viper or Razer series, but. The Diamondback series by volume just absolutely crushes it. And to that point, I brought with me a newer scope, a Diamondback Tactical first focal plane.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Which is a really, really neat scope. We do a 4 to 16 and a 6 to 24 in both MOA and mil, respectively, within each power range. And these scopes all sit on the shelf at sub $400. So for $399, the customer can get into an entry-level first focal plane scope with a windage-related reticle that they can use for holdovers and corrections, or calling misses, or judging game, whatever it is. It has side parallax.
Yeah,
it's a feature-packed 30 mil tube scope.
goHunt customers are going to see this on the shelf very, very, very on the website very, very soon.
Beautiful.
This scope, literally, if I blindfolded you and I put the scope in your hand, you started feeling it and feeling on how it feels, without looking through it, anything, just how it feels, the positive clicks, everything about it, you would think that this literally is a much higher price scope, period, bar none. It flat out has a different feel to it, and I'm really excited about this scope.
We are having trouble keeping up on those, truth be told. The 6 to 24 specifically has just been absolutely a home run. Not to say that there couldn't be improvements. There's always, sure. we take consumer feedback, and if there's something that people want to see and we hear it quite a bit, then we'll make it actionable. But it has been it's been just hats off to whoever was involved on that one, because it's been a home run.
This is under $400.
That one's actually $350. The 4 to 16 will be on the shelf at $350.
It goes back to the whole premise behind what started Vortex. you see a hole in the market, and you see what people are wanting and needing, and build it good, build it repeatable, put good glass in it, give it all the bells and whistles that our people are looking for, and make it right, and people will buy it. It's just that simple.
And it was the right time. I mean, let's face it, these rifle manufacturers are putting out good rifles in calibers like 6.5 Creedmoor that are capable guns in that sub $500-$600 price range, and it was time for an optic to kind of be match made in heaven with that.
In the first focal plane has really taken off, and by with I mean, it needed to, and you have a huge surge of people into the NRS and the PRS shooting matches, and so it gives people options to where they don't have to go have a $5,000 or $10,000 rifle just to compete.
Absolutely.
So yeah, good for them.
Yeah, Vortex actually did a video. I don't know if you caught it on it was a Ruger rifle, and I want to say it was an American, but I could be wrong. With a Diamondback mounted on it. It was a Diamondback Tactical. It wasn't a first focal plane, but it was essentially a budget build 1,000-yard gun. And the whole gun and scope and rings and everything, the whole thing put together at retail was less than $1,000. And
that's awesome.
They're out there ringing steel at $1,000.
That's really cool.
It's awesome. That's hard to. If I can circle back with you, Jay, I forgot to hit on one spotter, and that's our kind of lightweight Razer. We do an 11 to 33 by 50 kind of backpacking type.
That's real light.
Razer. It is, and that's the straight model. We do it in a straight and angled, 11 to 33 by 50, and on the shelf those will be about $699. So for the guy that maybe does carry a set of 8s, and honestly I use the thing all the time, and I sometimes carry those 12s on my chest, but to be able to get out there and know, okay, you know what, I do need to hike to that next knob, and I do need to get a better look at this. It's not, you're not going to field judge something at 2.5 miles with it, but you're going to get yourself in a much better position to decide how you want to make a plan and 11, not totally break
11 to 33.
11 to 33.
And Jay, probably my most favorite thing about that scope is the macro adjustments there. That really, really helps out.
And we're talking like, what, 12 or 13 inches? I mean, it's
very, very compact. Very packable. And I find in that model, I typically will pick up the straight because I want it to just ride on the inside of my pack, on one of the sides, and just be accessible as I see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. They did a really nice job with that one too.
Rangefinders.
This is where we get kind of exciting. So we're going to hit on, not that we didn't get anything exciting, but I'm excited to show you guys something brand new that's about to get released here. And you guys will actually be the first ones to touch that here in the state.
Which one are you referring to?
Well, let's let it build. Let me hit on something else.
I'm sorry,
now that I said it.
Which one were you referring to? It's not here.
As he tucks it in his pocket. So first I'm going to hit on the Fury Bino. For this year, we took our Fury binoculars and we upgraded the internals to make the rangefinder 5,000 yard capable.
Okay.
So if you remember the last 2 years, we had a Fury 1600, which was a good unit, and in its price point did very, very well. But this year we took that 1,600 yard laser rangefinder capability and we made it a 5,000. Changed a few other things. The reticle changed a little bit. The internals changed a little bit. The exterior did not. It is the same size. It is virtually the same weight. But to have a range-finding binocular in a 1042 HD glass configuration on the shelf at $1,200 is quite a wave. Yep. Especially when you consider that electronics fall under the VIP warranty, and no matter what happens to that thing, you're covered. You're into quite
one of the
a
things I
package.
want
It just ranged to 5 yards.
You'll actually, Jay, if you point that thing in your ground, you'll get 0.1. Paul Neese and I actually at Sheep Show, we had a gentleman walk up and he says, "What's the minimum range of these things?" I said, "I'll be honest, sir, I've never tried it." And he put it right on his foot and he said, "Well, I got 0.1. And I said, "Well, I've never had anything at 0.1 I needed to shoot at." So he goes, "I guess we're good." That was interesting.
One of the things that I've had the question before, so maybe we should tell a little history on the Fury.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Vortex used to have a line of binocular called the Furies, and that there is some people that say, well, because isn't that on the entry level side of things? And I'm like, no, that was an old binocular. This is a new binocular. They kept the name because of the Fury, the electronics, it all made sense, and great. I mean, just a great system.
Yeah, definitely not an entry level. The glass is Viper HD glass, so it's definitely nowhere near our.
I just think that there were
product.
some people that got confused with the Fury name.
Sure. I can see that, absolutely.
And I just want to make sure that people understood it. It is not of the Fury of old.
No.
And you're saying these are sub 1200?
They'll be right at 1200 on the shelf.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's neat is another thing I love about Vortex. They take a product, right? The Fury last year was 1,600 yards. The Fury this year is 5,000 yards. The price didn't change a dime.
No, it didn't.
And that's really cool to take a product and make it better, which justifiably could have brought a higher price with it. Just discontinue the old, bring in the new, and make it better is such a cool. I think that just speaks to the heart of the company. It's such a cool idea.
CR2 batteries.
CR2,
just typical.
Yep, still does meters and yards. You can switch back and forth. It has the HCD mode, which will compensate for angles, so you'll have that angular readout factored in.
Yards
or meters, whatever you prefer.
I like the dual diopter settings.
Yeah, so the right diopter actually focuses the rangefinder.
Yep.
So you want that image and the readout and the red display to be crisp, and if it's not, you need to reach up and make a quick adjustment, and then the left diopter does work like a standard diopter on a binocular and give you that ability. And then one other thing to note on that is it is right-hand operation. So for the average American, and no offense to people that are left-handed and whose parents didn't love them enough to make them right-handed, most of us carry our bow in our left hand, and so you need to use your rangefinder with the right. But it's and my mom's going to listen to this and hate me because she's left-handed. But it does work. It does work very well for the archery hunter. So, all right. So Jay's skipping ahead on me. He grabbed the Razer Rangefinder, but
Let's talk about those first.
I'll dive into the other two. Last year we put out a unit called the Impact, and this is an 850-yard rangefinder. It's non-illuminated, so the display reads black. But we put this out for the people that needed, and mainly archery hunters, that needed a range-finding solution without certain features or without illumination, that weren't worried about it and that had to hit a budget. And this thing sits on the shelf at $199. Again, still fully under the VIP warranty, just like every one of our products. But hits a target market of a $199 rangefinder.
It's electronics and glass.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the warranty covers everything. I mean, it covers tripod legs, but if you read into the fine print of other people's warranties, without me bashing anybody specifically, electronics are typically a downfall of a warranty. So I would encourage people to read into that as they look at products. But ours are 100% covered. So the Impact hits that price point in a rangefinder. It is an 850-yard capable unit on a reflective target. So rough rule of thumb, you get about half of that on a dull target like a deer or somebody wearing a sweatshirt or whatever it is.
Sure.
Which for the archery hunters, more than enough. I don't have a 400-yard pin. I don't know about you, Cody. Next in our rangefinder lineup.
No, but I don't have a 20. And my good buddy Cribs Webster's he's laughing at me right now as we're speaking, and he says I should have a 20 and a 30.
Tell him to call me.
I have to mention that.
The next in the lineup is our Ranger series, and over the years we've had quite a few different Ranger rangefinders over the years, being the last 4 or 5. There's been 1,000 and a 1,300 and a 1,500, and right now all we have is the 1,800. Has been a great seller. It actually took a price drop recently.
So what will that actually read to, say, deer?
I have hit deer at 980.
Okay.
Is the max that I've done it. But truth be told, rule of thumb is I'd call it 900 or less. 8 to 900 is fair.
I think that this is the perfect moment. It's 1,800, but the one thing that I love about the 1800 and in the Ranger 1000 and the 1300, be in between those, is that there is a 1/4 screw that you can put this on a tripod, and if you're using this as your long range, shooting, if you put these on a tripod, you will get very consistent ranges, out further than
Absolutely.
what you would normally do. And then the other thing I love about, I don't know why they don't do this or others don't, but the clip it's actually my favorite feature.
It's stout. They work great.
Because once you take these out of your pocket, I can clip them on my sternum strap, and it just doesn't go anywhere. It sits close to the. I just love it. I just don't know why others don't, but they should.
I mean, a lot of these bino harnesses nowadays too have little wind checker pockets or something on the side where you can clip it on there and not even worry about it. If you have it in your pocket or wherever until say the 100-yard mark, and you pull it out and get it clipped on and get ready for that 30 or 40-yard activity, then. So yeah, the clip's very important.
Super simple to use. Super simple to change. The modes. Good glass. Easy readouts. Fast operation.
You hit on fast operation, but now I'm going to go ahead and talk about this Razer.
So now we can get into the others.
So this Razer Rangefinder that by the time the listeners get the privilege of listening to us babble will be on the market. Is new for this year. It's a 4,000-yard capable unit, and like Jay kind of hit on when I first put it on the table, it is absolutely lightning fast. It still has the angular compensation built in, but it's Razer HD glass. It is faster than any rangefinder we've ever put out, and it is more capable than any handheld unit that we've ever put out.
So for the people that are listening, and I think I can say this, if you are familiar with the Vortex Razer products, okay, and you look at the system and you put it in your hands, it actually looks, feels, color scheme like a Razer product. That's the first thing I notice about it. The second thing I noticed about it was a little bit of it wasn't a huge deal, but the fact that you've taken where the 1/4 screw goes in and that you've put an actual flat plate to it. Now when you mount it to a plate, there's no rock, there's no nothing. You don't get any turn. I'm super excited about that because I like to mount these up. And again, even though you could do it on the old, you have the clip that's still visible, and it can be mounted on both sides, whether you're left or right-handed. And then the first and probably the most noticeable thing is going to be really the eyepiece. So if you want to expound more, and please tell us everything you can tell us. Sure. I'm super excited about this piece of gear.
No, I'm really excited about it as well. And what our engineers did on this eyepiece is they made it adjustable for eye relief. And so just like on your binocular,
it's got a 3-set.
It does.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it has a detent built in to where you can adjust so that you have that perfect field of view, that perfect image when you slam this thing to your face. And another notable feature is that it is a 7x25, and typically our rangefinders have been 6 power. Yeah. So with that HD glass and the 7x25, which if you're going to be using it out to those distances, say 2,000, 3,000, that extra power is important. It is. Percentage-wise, it's a huge gain. So we're excited about this unit. It's going to be on the shelf at $499, and they are going to be shipping shortly. So
yeah, for the goHunt guys, just contact me and we'll get you going as soon as they arrive. They should be there. They won't be too long.
I was playing with it before the podcast and was really impressed with how responsive it is. And it shoot what I think closest was just over 5 yards.
We were getting 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 5 to 2,000, a little more than 2,500
on a deer.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I actually was playing with it on some rocks, and I got rocks and bushes at just under 3,000. I've gotten a dumpster at Lake Pleasant at just under 4,000. It was like 2 yards shy. Well, I haven't got it to read 4K yet, but there was nothing for me to hit, so I didn't.
And this is a great time, and I love to interject these little things. Probably one of the most common questions is that when we get these the question will be why do I need a 2700? Why do I need a 28? Why do I need 3000? And I'm just going to tell you what I use them for. And then if you're stocking something, flat out, if I want to know how to cut the distance, I love being able to range something at the longest distance possible on a big giant rock, reflective tree, target, whatever. You range it. Now I know, okay, I got to cut that distance to at least half.
Right.
And so, whether it's fourth, I just think that the more that you have at your disposal, so if in this case 4,000 yards, it's going to do all of the ranges that we're talking about, and certainly would shoot from, and then some.
Well, for like Jay, I mean, if you have somebody that tells you, hey, what are you comfortable shooting? Well, I can only shoot out to 450 yards. Okay, well, if we see that animal we're at 2,000, and you can then use that to find a knob or a vantage point within that person's range, that's massive. Hey, we're going for that hill that's got the 3 swallows on top of it. When you get there, or hey, when you get to that one, you need to be quiet. Whatever it is, it's to me, it is more of a planning tool than an engagement for those distances. To be able to say, hey, I just gather more data and be more
all
effective,
the same modes as the 18.
Correct. Yep. Meters and yards, adjustable brightness, line of sight mode, or angle compensation, which
Awesome.
it comes preset on the angle compensation unless you're very specific needing line of sight. I'd probably leave it there, but. Yep, all the same stuff.
I'm thinking. Now I know we're not doing. That might be one of the fastest readouts I've ever, maybe. And the one that it reminds me the most of is and I don't mind, is the old Zeiss RFs before the
great rangefinder.
Great rangefinder.
Absolutely.
But that was one of the fastest that I just had to go back and think about. That was one of the most fast receivers that I've ever used.
It is very quick, and I was shocked at how fast it was at distance. It's one thing for us to play with it inside of 2,300. Sure. When I was getting those quick readouts on those rocks at 22 and 2,500, as a salesman, I'm just amped because all I have to do is pull a guy outside, show it to him, and I don't see too many people.
I think that's going to be
sweet.
That's a no-brainer.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah,
very excited about it.
This is
that
sweet,
is
for sure.
An easy piece to be excited about right there. That is absolutely true.
Well, guys, I want to take a quick second. I need to thank the sponsors of this podcast, and we're going to do a Q&A on my Instagram. I put out for Vortex questions. Jaryd, I really appreciate you going through the whole line here and kind of giving me and the listeners kind of a breakdown, and Cody, you adding to it. I want to thank the sponsors of this podcast. I want to thank goHunt.com, the optics department. Obviously, Cody, you're the optics manager. GoHunt, you do an amazing job filling the need of people needing information. They call and talk to you. You can walk them through. You ask them their needs. I want to thank GoHunt, the optics department. I want to thank you, Cody, being the optics manager. Obviously, I call you the glassing guru. I've known you for 20 plus years. I want to encourage anybody that is looking for binoculars, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, anything to do with glassing, tripods, to reach out to Cody. Heads. You can reach Cody at 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. You can also send him an email at optics@gohunt.com. I also want to thank gohunt.com, the Insider. The Insider is the best Western hunting resource tool when you're looking at all of the different states across the West and looking to apply in different places. If you go to gohunt.com/JScott, you're going to automatically get a $50 GoHunt Gear Shop gift card. I want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting. KUIU is the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. You can go to KUIU.com, that's KUIU.com, to find out more. I want to thank KUIU for their sponsorship. I also want to thank Canyon Coolers, based right out of Flagstaff, Arizona. If you go to use the JScott19 promo code at canyoncoolers.com, you're going to get a 10% discount. I also want to thank phonescope.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount. And last but not least, OnX Maps. I use OnX Maps every day out in the field. I even use it in my real estate business. Go to onxmaps.com, use the JScott19 promo code, and you're going to get a 20% discount. Guys, I put out there to Instagram followers questions. I told them I was going to be doing a podcast with you guys, so let's just dive into some of them.
Sure. Awesome. These I always enjoy these because you don't know what you're going to get.
See.
You never know.
So
these guys are on blast. They have no idea what I'm about to ask them. But what is eye relief, and what is the importance of it?
Well,
We flip a coin.
yeah, no, I think the easiest way to it's the distance between the optic and your eye and where they meet and come together that you can see a full picture. And the eye cups of the optic typically help you adjust that so that it's a more automatic thing when you pull it up to your face or mount your rifle scope. Rifle scopes will have a longer eye box. Generally, spotting scope, binoculars will have a short eye box. So it depends. If you're an eyeglass wearer, you're going to put the eye cups down so that you can get the piece of the surface of the glass closer to your eye. Spotting scopes are generally have a decent eye box, but at the same time it's relatively the same as a binocular. But it's really, quite honestly, it's extremely important, because if you have a piece of optic that you really have trouble looking at, or you can't get close to, or can't get near, and it's you're having trouble seeing through it, the eye relief can be a problem if it's not set up right.
Okay. Please ask about their new rangefinder that they are teasing about on their Instagram. I assume that's the Vortex.
I'll take that one as a win.
Yeah,
we already got that one.
We got that one knocked out.
We just hit the Razer Vortex 4000.
But really, what should be said, guys, literally, just everything that's in that package, please give it a look. Please give it a try. Call me. I'm really super excited about that package. It's got everything that I think you need.
I think we covered this one. Major difference between Diamondback and Viper line scopes, but just in a general term, hit that for me.
Sure. The biggest difference is going to be glass quality. The difference between HD and non-HD glass, the Diamondback being non-HD. And then a lot of the rest of the price differential is going to be just simple construction, whether it be eye cups or the hinge or internals, just the way that they're put together. HD glass coming with a longer sit, less fatigue. It just all, again, depends what you're using it for. If you're behind it for a long time, HD glass is going to benefit you. If you're throwing it up, looking at something quickly and putting it down, then the Diamondback may be perfect for you.
Any BTX similar products coming out with Vortex?
This is where I'm going to stay in my swim lane. I truthfully am not on the product development.
I'll answer the question, and Jaryd can't answer the question. I don't know whether there's one are coming or not, but the point is, there's been a lot of people asking for this.
Absolutely.
I understand it. I get it. I'm a proponent of it. If it happens, wonderful. I would tell you that it would be a really neat piece of gear if we could make it happen. I think that there's a calling for it. I think it would be really interesting to see what Vortex could do with it. I don't even know if with their given eyepiece and system, if it's a possibility. I know that the other company that is making it, that's a very unique system. So I'd love it if we could put something together like that, because, when you go back and you start talking about the 18 by 56 and somebody not wanting to use a spotting scope, if they had an option to use both eyes open, and be able to glass at what we would consider miles instead of, yards, and you start doing that, I really can't think, why there wouldn't be a reason we do it, but I don't know. But to answer their question, I know of nothing that's coming down the pike, but boy, would I love to entertain that idea.
Why make the Fury HD same quality as the Vipers and not the Razers?
Again, staying in my swim lane and being the desert rat sales rep that I am, my understanding was we were after a very specific price point. And Viper HD glass allowed us to have the clarity we needed to accomplish the mission. It worked well with the rangefinding technology, but let us, in the construction of a Viper type binocular, let us hit the price point that we were after. And that goal was to put it in as many people's hands as possible. So
Exactly.
as a Western hunter, I'd love to see it in a Razer. I'm not going to say it's out of the realm. I could truthfully tell you I don't know if it's going to happen. I know absolutely nothing about whether that's going to go down. But I have heard it quite a bit before. So I know that it's on Vortex's radar, but I have no idea the extent that it goes after that.
What line of glass is the Vortex Fury 5000 Viper ? Razer ?
It is Viper HD.
What are some of the pros and cons of upgraded Razer spotter?
Pros is you're getting into glass quality that allows you to sit longer. So fatigue becomes less the longer the sit is. You can just sit longer, straight, plain and simple. Cons are going to be price. With feature set and with improved quality comes a downfall, and that downfall would be price tag. But the weight is not really any different than our Viper spotters. The size is not really any different. Depending on the model you're looking at, there's typically a relative or corresponding product in each one.
And I would just add to that, both products extremely durable.
They are.
You can work over pretty good, and they'll I mean, let's face it, the bigger the optics, they do take a little bit heavier abuse because they're just heavier and they get moved around and thrown around a little bit. But so I think the durability is good on both.
They are.
Really great on both.
Spotters as a whole are not warranted as often as some other products, and it's definitely because of the type of use. People are a whole lot more careful with big pieces of glass. Sure. So we do see great results from a durability standpoint.
We got a bunch of questions on this, so we'll just ask it once and be done with it. Any word when or if they will come out with a Razer HD 15x56?
All I can say is keep saying it. We take a lot of pride in listening to the consumer and what they're after. As education becomes, we hit on this earlier, as education comes out and as glassing techniques come out, that call has been more and more consistent for that product. I don't know that it's coming. I truthfully do not. But as a Western guy who lives in Arizona, I would welcome it with open arms for sure.
I'm going to say it both from that perspective and the fact that I sell optics. Boy, do I welcome that. I can't think of anything that would be a really good zip to the market, and I think they could sell a ton of units that way. I mean, I think there's a ton of people who would jump on board with a 15 Razer.
We have, if you kind of look at the Fury or look at that Razer Rangefinder, and I know that's been in development for a long time, our team is smart. So there's no doubt that things like that, or like the BTX or whatever it is, products that people are asking for, there's no doubt that it's on a whiteboard somewhere in the deep, dark depths of Vortex HQ. But our guys are such perfectionists, it just may take some time. You just never know.
One of the things, Jaryd, and you and I have known each other a while, and I think the Razer series, and I'm even excited about the way that the new rangefinder feels, and the way that when they set this binocular up, I can honestly say that, and Jay, we were talking about your first pair of binoculars last time, and it was a 1040 Zeiss, the old classics, and I think that's an iconic, that's like, kind of a rite of passage kind of a deal, It's kind of that my first memory of chest glass, and the Razers, and they embody that. There's a feel to them. There's an ergonomic to them. There's that. It's not a heavy, fat, padding. It doesn't feel that way. They're lightweight, but yet there's a solidness to them.
Stout.
They're exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think that, man, if they could do a 15 with that and keep that thought to them, that kind of presence, I think you'd sell a ton of them.
I'm with you.
So
pass
it on to the R&D boys.
I will.
I've accumulated quite a bit of dirt and scratches on mine. What's the warranty repair policy with Vortex?
We'd be happy to refresh them for you and replace anything that is that's damaged or that needs some love. On our website, there's a service repair form. So vortexoptics.com. Last I checked, it was located at the top right, but we just released a new website, so don't hold me to that. But there is a service request form. It gives you all the instructions on where to send it, how to send it, what to write on the box, what to write on the label, etc. And we'd be happy to take a look and get it back to optimal working order.
Biggest differences between the Razer and Viper line from binos to spotters. And you covered a bunch of that,
Yeah,
but
it's
just in
it's,
general
it's
terms.
really in the glass quality and the construction of some of the internals, eyepiece construction. Just the way that it interfaces internally is just a different optical system.
Is there let's see. How are the Vultures compared to the other models?
So the Vulture is another line where we had a target, and that target was to get a broad spectrum of the market into a 15 power bino without breaking the bank. And so that Vulture in that 500-ish price range to be able to effectively look and glass at distance was the goal. Is it the biggest, baddest, brightest, or no, it wasn't intended to be. It was intended to let people get involved, and if you find that you needed something better, then great, let's go for it. But truth be told, the Vultures are back ordered 7 days a week. They sell incredibly well because of that target market and the fact that we did successfully accomplish hitting it. So,
is Vortex coming out with a true zero stop locking turrets?
I guess I'd love to have a conversation with that individual because that could go a couple ways. The Razer Gen 2 does have a integrated hard zero stop, and it does have a locking turret. So I guess from an initial view, I would say we do have it.
Vortex Kaibab, why only 18 power now and not 15?
That's out of my swim lane, to be perfectly honest. It goes back to trying to shake up the market from my point of view, but I'd have to.
I think what you said about the kind of trying to set itself apart and hit kind of a niche, and those binoculars are either for somebody that doesn't like spotting scopes and they need just that extra little power. Quite frankly, I really think that they should give them a look.
Going sheep hunting next year, what magnification do I need in my spotter?
I would actually turn that question to you, Jay, with your background. I haven't had the good fortune of getting on a sheep hunt.
I think that it gets thrown into two different categories. It's
super lightweight.
It's super lightweight, or is it? I really think that it always comes down to that. And if you're into the digiscoping and you want the best quality pictures and you have to see things at the longest distances, I think a guy has to look at the bigger optics. I'm sorry, I just think that that's the way to look at it.
Right.
But if you're going to go lightweight, some guys get down to that and they realize, wait a minute, maybe when I turn the power all the way up, it's not as... so what do you want?
Right.
And I think that's the thing that needs to be said about that. There's compromises and trade-offs with no matter what decision you make. So if you want all the bells and whistles, you're going to have to pay for it in a little bit of weight. But if you want to trim down, you're going to lose a little bit of that, maybe low light or whatnot. So I think it comes down to weight more than it does.
And that's kind of where I was going to go. At Sheep Show, we had quite a few guys stop by and grab that little Razer and say how they wish they had that on their hunt, and they gave very specific explanation of why. And so that little 11 to 33 definitely has its place in the world, depending on what else you're taking with you.
Sure.
I could certainly see having a bigger spotter at camp or on a generic area, and then keeping that straight in the pack for the climb.
Best use for 18 power Kaibabs?
Western hunting.
Mine's Western hunting, and especially, I keep going back to it. The guy that doesn't want to look through a spotting scope and wants to use that power and let that dog walk a little bit.
Guys, we could probably go here till we're blue in the face.
Have you got more, Jay?
You've hit some.
Keep them coming, baby.
You've hit some good questions here. I want to take a second here and thank you, Jaryd, for your time, for spending, a great amount of time going through the whole Vortex line. I know the listeners, they love hearing about it. And Cody, it's always great having you on.
Thank you,
Jay,
for the opportunity.
Want to give both of you a chance if you have any final thoughts, any final conclusions.
No, I think look, Jaryd and I are working hard at some new footprints for us. Me being new, with goHunt now, I haven't even been there a year yet. I'm learning our customers, and we're learning what mix of SKUs and things make most sense for us. And I would just ask that people give us an opportunity to present to them the best products that we can, and Vortex is going to be a large part of that. I can just tell you that right now. So,
No,
Jaryd,
that's
I just
Cody.
appreciate.
Thank you. I
mean,
appreciate the invite. I appreciate the time, and the education piece is huge. And a lot of times products get overlooked simply by the lack of education. So, between goHunt and you, Jay, giving us the time, we truly appreciate it.
Well, I think sometimes too, when you have a vast line, you have a bunch of different products. Some can get lost if you don't talk about them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think you did a really good job. Moving forward with the Arizona applications coming up here in June for deer, I know you're a big deer hunter too as well. Are you going to be focused more on archery deer, or are you going to be focused on rifle?
I am going to be focused on archery.
Yeah. Will you put in for a rifle deer hunt too, or?
I probably will not this year. And like I said, with that baby coming, if I don't draw a tag of a lifetime type stuff, I'm going to try to save my marriage and stay home just at least for this season. So.
Swinging for the fence.
That's where I'm at.
This when you'll draw the 13B tag or something.
And my wife will understand that. She gets it, and she can read it on my face. If it's something kind of once in a lifetime, she'll be supportive. So.
Hey, I know what I'm going to do for this year's draw.
I'm sure. Let me fill out your application.
No. Well, I'm going to have somebody check my applications and make sure I fill that out right.
Good.
I don't think there's a toe tag you got to worry about, though.
Oh, man.
There's never a time in my life that I would think that mistake would ever have happened.
I'm not kidding you. It's 30 or 31 years. I was counting.
Like, you're the most meticulous person I know. So you just own it like a badge, don't you?
Why not? I've heard everybody else make mistakes. It was my time.
I guess so.
I took one for the team. Not give me my own tag, or give me my late whitetail tag for next. No, you know what? I'll take a sheep tag.
Awesome. Guys, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing with us. Listeners out there, really appreciate all of the listener support that you guys give this podcast. I really appreciate the response that you give me through email, through direct message. If you do want to send me an email, you can send it to jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. You can also send me a direct message on Instagram. That's @jscottoutdoors. Love hearing from you. We're going to go pile up the turkeys here in Mexico, so if you're wondering where I'm at, you can check the J Scott Outdoors Instagram page, also my Gould's Turkey Hunt. So it's @Gould's Turkey Hunt to kind of keep up with what we're doing. And again, God bless all the listeners. God bless you guys, and look forward to
Thanks,
the next episode.
Jay, as usual, again, appreciate the opportunity. This is this is a platform that we're going to kind of keep working with and keep doing, and I know we have other stuff that you and I are working on too. So I just appreciate the opportunity. It means a lot. You really do help more than you know.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Yep, well said.